and there's a reason for it. And the reason for it is because of times like tonight. Originally, I was going to speak about boldness, and I really felt like the Lord was having me draw from a well that I was at the beginning of this year. And if you were a brotherhood at the beginning of this year, which only the guys were, I talked a lot about the authority of the believer, what it means to step out in boldness and use the name of Jesus not only as a weapon, but knowing that that's the name above all names, and with his blood, we can conquer all things. But that's not what I'm talking about tonight. With the season, the Lord's kind of had me, and he's kind of had me in a weird place, and I want to preface this whole thing with where the Lord has had me by saying that the love of the Father is the foundation for our friendship with Jesus. And that's kind of where the Lord's had me right now, is in the season that I've been in, he's been really drawing out a lot of my pastoral attributes, if you will. And that doesn't only necessarily mean me being a pastor as a person, but drawing out love in my life in a deeper level. And there were some things that I didn't really understand, and I felt myself being hurt in that season. And a lot of it came from the friends that I was with. I would ask them to do things, and then the last minute, they would either flake out, they wouldn't be there for me when I needed them, or something would happen where they would have some like excuse that really didn't make any sense to me. And so I found myself in a season of just really being hurt, almost feeling betrayed. And through all that, the Lord's kind of shown me a few things. I don't really have a huge message. I have some thoughts that I want to just kind of share with you guys tonight. And a few of those thoughts are that I believe that the Lord values covenant above almost anything else, because time and time again you see the Lord making a covenant with his people, and he makes a covenant and the covenant's broken. He makes another covenant and he says he's going to keep establishing a covenant, and in Jeremiah he says, I'm going to establish a covenant, a new covenant, which will be different than the one that I did with the house of Israel when I led them out of Egypt, when I took them by their hand. And the reason why the Lord is always establishing a covenant with his people is because he cares about them. He's establishing a covenant because he loves them. And you have to understand that when Adam was in the garden, it says that he walked with God. And when he was walking with God, there was a relationship between them. There was a friendship. It wasn't just Adam walking with God at this, oh my gosh, he's in the presence of God. It goes so much deeper than that. Adam had a heart-to-heart connection with God. It says that he walked in the midst of him and talked with him. Adam had conversations with God, and he had a friendship. And when Adam partook of the fruit in the garden, the trust between the relationship was broken. And if we're not careful, we start to view the Father as an angry man. But the Father isn't angry by what we do. His heart is grieved by what we're living in. His heart was grieved when he was in the garden with Adam, when he bit the fruit. He didn't cast him out because he was angry. He cast him out because his heart was grieved. And we need to start to get sort of an understanding of what it looks like to have a covenant and friendship in our lives. And it's just so important, because it's just another huge aspect of what the Father's heart is inside of this house. And not only in this house, but what we do when we walk out of here. And we start talking to people and we have connections with them. And you know, it says in 1 John, it says God is love, and that's what John writes. John's a love apostle. He goes to a town with Jesus, and they don't want anything to do with Jesus. They cast him out, and then James and John's response to them is, Lord, do you want us to call down fire on them like Elijah did? And Jesus' response is, you don't know what spirit you're calling on. And then after that, John's all about love. He's not calling down any more fire. All his letters, love, 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 love. Love your brother, love your neighbor, love everyone. There's no more fire. And so John had such a deep understanding of Jesus' heart because he spent time with him. He calls himself the beloved disciple for a reason. It's because he spent time with Jesus, and he was a friend. And It says in 1 John, like I just said, it says God is love. And that means that God's vulnerable. God's a vulnerable man. He's vulnerable. He wants to have a relationship with us. That's why he offers that, so that we can be in communion with him. And he offers that relationship not only because we're just the people that he's created, he wants us to walk in the midst of it again. He just wants us to walk into a friendship with him, walk in a covenant with him, walk with him just like Adam walked with God in the garden. And so, like I said, I've just kind of been in that place where I've been valuing friendship more than I really ever have before. I've just had this, it's almost been like this burden that's been laid on my heart. And I woke up this morning, and that's how this whole thing came about. The whole week, I've kind of been feeling the Lord sort of tugging at my heart in a new way. And when I got to this morning, I woke up and I was like, the Lord had just laid this burden on my heart for us to understand how important it is for us to be friends. And not just friends that are like, yeah, I'm friends with that person, we have a conversation every once in a while. No, friends that sit down and talk with each other and have a deep understanding of what their heart is for ministry, but not only that, but the pain that they feel every single day. The pain that they go through. When Jesus is in the garden with his disciples, it says that Jesus was praying, and he goes a stone's throw away. And he sits down and he prays. And it says that his sweat was like drops of blood. He was in such great distress. He had this distressing spirit upon him. So he goes and he prays. His face is to the ground. He's crying out to the Father to take away the cup of suffering, but not his will be done, but the Father's will be done. And so when that happens, he comes back and the disciples and he says, could you not watch and pray for 1 hour? Could you not watch for 1 hour? And Jesus is in the most distressing moment in his ministry. He's in this crucial moment where he's in a lot of distress, but he's in a lot of pain too. And his disciples are sleeping. What kind of friends are the disciples of Jesus? In John, Jesus speaks to the disciples at the last meal that he's having with them, and he says, there's no greater love than this, than when a friend should lay down his life for another friend. And then he goes to say that I no longer call you servants, for servants know not what their master is doing, but I call you friends because I reveal to you everything that the Father above has revealed to me. And he's sitting down at that table, he's sharing his heart from a vulnerable place, and he knows that the disciples are going to betray him. He knows that the disciples every single one of them are about to deny his name, even though they've walked with him for 3 years in ministry. And they're sitting in the garden, and Jesus is crying out to the Father. And while he's crying out to the Father, he comes back. And the disciples are sleeping. Can you imagine the pain Jesus felt? That his disciples were about to betray him. And he said that you're my friends. And I believe that we can get a deeper understanding of people's pain if we will just sit down and watch. If we will just sit down with someone, say, you're my friend. I don't understand what you're going through, but I'm here for you. And that's just been the cry of my heart for this ministry, not only this ministry, but just as the body as a whole. Because when one part of the body suffers, the whole body suffers. If the arm hurts, you don't cut it off, you nurture it back to health. Are we a people that function as a body that when someone hurts, we say, let me nurture you back to health? Or are we a people who just sit off to the side and sleep while other people are in pain? And that's just something that the Father's been revealing to me lately. It's just the love of the body, that we have to function together and understand the pain, because if one part of the body's in pain, everybody else may not be in pain, but we need to get to that place where we understand other people's pain. If somebody has a toothache, it starts to resonate through the whole body because your tooth is hurting. The nerves are hurting, and you get to the point where you can't eat anymore because it just hurts to eat. You're chewing, it hurts, you're in a lot of pain. And then it gets to the point, and people have actually died from having cracked teeth, and it's because they can't eat. And it's like, what do you do? What do you do with that when you think about it? Do you just ignore it and act like you can't ignore something like that and act like it's not happening? We have to be a people that when a tooth hurts, we seek help. We seek out for others to come forward and understand our pain. And I know that sounds weird, but it's true. It's a weird analogy, but it truly gives us sort of an idea of what the body is how a tooth can be so small, but how it can affect the whole body. How one toothache can create hunger. And how when you don't eat, you die. And we need to realize that if there's one part of the body that's in pain, we can learn from that person. We can be fed by that person. We can start to understand their pain at a deeper level. It's not about having a ministry of public power. It's about having a ministry of private friendship with Jesus. It's about being able to sit down at the table with someone and not say, I'm checking this off my list of the gospel. Because Jesus' ministry went far beyond sitting at a table with his disciples and sharing a meal. It says that John laid his head on the bosom of Jesus. John sat with Jesus in such an intimate way that he understood that he wasn't just John, he was John the Beloved. That Jesus loved him in such a way that all of John's letters were written about love. And that grips my heart to hear that, because if we're not a body that seeks out friendship, then what are we? Are we sleeping disciples? Are we a true reflection of the church that Jesus died on the cross and said, today I die for my friends? And I'm all about having a ministry of public power. I'm all about having a ministry where we're healing the sick and raising the dead and casting out demons. But what happens at the end of the day when those people come in here and they're healed and they go home and they say, well, what do I do next? And they're just lost and they don't know what to do. And they just need a friend. And that's what the Lord's been showing me in the season that I've been in, is that love's not only a word that John writes about, but love is also an action that John lives out. Love is an action that John lives out. And when you see John and Peter go to prayer in Acts 3, you see Peter come to the lame man at the gate of Beautiful. And the lame man is seeking for gold and silver because he's poor and he doesn't have anything. Peter says, silver and gold I have not for you, but what I do have for you, I'll give for you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, stand up and walk. And I believe that when Peter betrayed Jesus, he had a deeper understanding of what the love of the Father was. That's why I said at the beginning, the love of the Father sets the foundation for our friendship with Jesus. And when Jesus is sharing this moment with his disciples and saying, I love you, you're my friends, Peter finally gets it after he denies Jesus. Can you imagine what it was like for Peter? In the moment where Jesus is being arrested, Peter denies him 3 times. their eyes lock. It says that their eyes meet. And it says that Peter begins to weep bitterly. He begins to weep bitterly because he knows not only that the prophecy that Jesus just spoke about Peter denying him came true, but he begins to weep because he understands, I just betrayed my friend. I sat at the table with this man, and I just betrayed him. And I believe in that moment, Peter had an understanding of what the love of the Father truly was. I don't think Judas understood that. That's why I think that Judas took his own life, was because he never had a true grasp of what it looked like to have the love of the Father live inside of you. But Judas had a decision too. Judas could have gone back to Jesus, and I believe they would have forgiven him. But instead he took his own life. And I think it's because Judas didn't have the foundation of the love of the Father, which is friendship with Jesus. And Jesus is offering that friendship with us. But we have this option in this time that we're in. Is that friendship that's living inside of us, is that going to bleed into other people's lives? Or are we just going to keep it this private friendship between Jesus and myself? John sits at the table with Jesus. But John, when Jesus goes away, he's not like just in private prayer in the closet all the time. He's out living out love, and that's why he writes his letters to say that you need to understand love at a deeper level. You need to understand love and friendship as a body, as a whole. And so Jesus, when Adam's in the garden and the friendship is severed in that moment, it's because God's heart is grieved. God is love. God is vulnerable. And so when man disobeys God, the trust is broken and his heart is grieved. God's heart is grieved right then. And then Jesus, in the garden, is distressed, and you can see that his heart is grieved for what he's about to take. But he hangs on the cross and says, today I die for my friends. And I think that Jesus is teaching us what it looks like to be friends that commune together, and friends that are rooted in love and function as a body. Not people that are just seeking to see demons cast out and people healed. And signs and wonders and miracles, and all those things are great. I live to see those things. I love to see those things. Before I came up here tonight, I was expecting, with the message I had, I was expecting those things to happen. But it's interesting to see how the Father will just flip things in 360 degrees and say, this is an aspect of the kingdom. Healing, signs, wonders, and miracles are an aspect of the kingdom, but there's something that's so much greater that comes with sitting down at a table with someone and getting to know them at a heart level. Sitting down with someone and getting to understand their pain. When someone says that they're depressed, you don't say, well, this is what the Bible says about you. You're beloved, you're beautiful. You don't have to be depressed. Sure, all those things are great. I do those things. But sometimes it's just about sitting down and saying, I understand your pain. I may not understand it fully, but I want to begin to understand it now. And are we going to be the people that stick beside those who are hurting and in pain? Or are we going to be the ones who sleep on the side when we see people who are in distress? When we see people that don't know what's going on, when they're hurting and they're in pain, and they're bruised and they're broken, will we be the ones who say, I love you? Or will we be the ones who betray our friends after we spend time with them? Will we be the ones to press forward and know that other people are going to betray us, but we can be the friend that Jesus was? We can be and begin to have this reflection of who Jesus is in our lives, if we can just begin to understand what covenant truly means, what friendship truly means. And that's sort of what Jesus does. Even though he knows he's going to be betrayed that night when he's at the table, he chooses to wash his disciples' feet. He chooses to sit down and say, it's time for me to wash your feet. And Peter says, Lord, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be washing my feet. I should be washing your feet. And then Jesus says, if you don't let me do this, you have no part with me. What? What does Jesus say? He's saying, let me wash your feet so that you can have a true understanding of what friendship looks like between me and you. It's not about serving other people sometimes. Sometimes it's just about accepting them for the filth and the dirt that they have and saying, I love you. Be my friend. Be the friend. Don't be the friend that people expect you to be. Be the friend that Jesus was. Because God will break all expectations of what you think friendship is. And He'll lay a foundation for what it truly is in your life. And it looks different for each person. It always will. Each person has a different aspect of the kingdom in the way that they operate, in the way that they pray, in the way that they read the Word. All friendships will look the same. Well, one will not look the same. But if we can begin to have a true understanding of what love looked like between the disciples and Jesus, I believe that we, the body, can begin to function together. Despite the pain, the bruises, and the dirt, that we can be friends that don't abandon each other. We can be the friend that Jesus was in the garden and said, I know all 12 of these men are about to deny me, but I endure the cross because these are my friends. The 12 disciples weren't just men that Jesus was trying to get to power so that He could see His kingdom come with power and signs and wonders and miracles. He sat with His disciples because He wanted them to understand that friendship is what will fuel us. Love is what will fuel us to step forward, to see people come into the kingdom. We see the kingdom come when friendship and love is established, that we accept citizens for who they are, not who they can be. We accept people not by color, gender, or the sins that they're living in. We do accept them for that reason. We accept them for who they are, not for what they can be. When we begin to put God in a box, we begin to put people in a box as well. We begin to put people in a box that this is the expectation of what God wants you to be. No, it says that God accepts you for who you are. God accepts. It says that He sits at the table with sinners and tax collectors. Yes, He wants them to turn away from their sins, but He accepts them for who they are. And He even goes to call the Pharisees and the scribes, you brood of wicked vipers. He's trying to birth something inside of them and say, it's not about where people are. It's not about where people are going. It's about where people are in the moment. It's about accepting them for who they are, not what they can be. Because when we have that thought, we put God inside the box, just like the scribes and the Pharisees did. Because when they said, why are you sitting at the table with these tax collectors and sinners, they put God inside of a box and said, this is what the kingdom's supposed to look like. But it's interesting how God can step in and break man's expectation and say, no, this is also another aspect of the kingdom. And that's why I think it's so funny that the Lord was having me speak about boldness before I came in here. And now He's kind of releasing a word that shows a completely different aspect of the kingdom. We have the band come back up. I think I've shared most of my thoughts. So tonight was a little different for me. I've never actively shared what the Lord's been doing in my life. And that's just kind of what the Lord's been doing, just unleashing a flood of love in my life and just showing me what it looks like for the love of the Father to set a foundation for my friendship with Jesus. Because I think now where I've been, I have such a deeper understanding of what it means to be a friend with Jesus, rather than just a partner with him. It's great to walk beside Jesus and operate in power, signs, wonders, and miracles, but you can do that and never truly understand what it means to be a friend. Jesus gives his disciples the authority to cast out demons, and he sends them out. We have the power and the authority to do it, but do we have a friendship with Jesus? Do we have friendship with one another? Are we truly operating the way that God wants us to? And so that's been my prayer over this ministry, is that God would just give us a deeper revelation of what it means to be friends and have a covenant. And I believe that we can get there. I truly do. Jesus reveals it to the disciples, and he wants to reveal it to us too, what it means to be friends, what it means to be true friends, to sit down and get to know each other. So Jesus, we just thank you for what you've done. I just thank you that we are your friend, that you call us friends. I just thank you for making the sacrifice, Lord, for knowing that even though that you were going to be betrayed, that you took the cross, you bore it for our sins and our iniquity, so that we could walk with you again in communion, that we could walk and be friends with you. That we don't have to hide in fear, but that we can come openly, running into the arms of the Father, to get a true grasp of what love means in our lives. So Lord, I just pray as we move forward, God, that you would just unleash love right now, Lord. Just unleash friendship and covenant into this place, Lord. Just begin to give us a little nugget of what it looks like to be a body, what it looks like to operate as a whole. Just teach us what it looks like to sit at you with the table and lay on your chest and hear your heartbeats. Just give us a deeper revelation of love.